It's a new semester. I'm teaching the largest economics class my university has ever offered, and everyone wants to understand one economic policy. But the news and politicians not only aren't explaining the economics well, they're sometimes lying about it. I had to come up with a way to teach tariffs. So in this video, without using graphs, I'm going to teach 4 points on tariffs so clearly that you'll be able to explain it to your uncle who shares crazy conspiracy theories on Facebook. But he's probably right about your microwave. You should get that checked out. Number 1, before telling you about the tariffs that are unconstitutional, let me explain one of the most important principles of tariffs. Once you understand this, it makes every other part so much easier to understand. And it's the biggest piece of intuition that gets lost when you're just drawing supply and demand graphs. I'm going to demonstrate it using this chessboard over here. So you can imagine this chessboard is going to be our marketplace, and this top half of the board is going to be where our buyers are, and the bottom half is going to be where our sellers are. Or in this case, these are going to be our importers, and these are going to be our exporters. I'm going to put a line in the middle right here that indicates this is the price that is going on in the market. And, I'm going to put these people on this board in a way that says, for the importers, the buyers, however close they are to this line, that tells me whether they're getting a good deal out of this. So the farther away from this line they are, the better deal they're getting. These guys are getting it just barely at a good deal. These guys are getting a great deal. And sellers are the same way. They have a different deal, right? So the closer they are to the price, the worse the deal is for them. I mean, they're just barely participating in this if they're that close to the line. But the further away they are, they're actually making a lot of money off of this deal. This is great for them. They love being in this market. If you're on the same file as someone, that's who you're doing business with, right? And the total value created by this deal is basically the space in between them. So any deal that happens is a great deal. So these guys over here, it looks like they're right next to each other. They're not creating a ton of value in this, but they're still creating value because there's an exchange happening. So this is good for them. But then this guy is far away from the market price. So he is getting it for a much lower price than he would be willing to pay for it. And this guy over here, he's selling it at a higher price than he'd be willing to pay for it. So they're in a great deal, but everybody is paying the same price and we have different deals going on. Okay. So also another thing to understand is if this price were to move, let's say lower, these people right here would drop out of the market. They would say, this isn't a good deal. It's not worth it. I can't get enough out of this deal to keep me in. And the same thing is if the price goes up higher, these people say, oh, it's not worth it for me to stay in this deal. I'm going to drop out because the price is higher than I'm willing to pay, right? So if this price were to move around, it would change who's participating in the market. Now, the good thing is we're in a market where people are meeting up with each other and they're selling. So we already know this is the price. Everybody's happy to participate. So now what happens when we put a tariff on here? Well, a tariff you can think of as like a big gap between the price of the seller and the price of the buyer. The importer is going to come in here and pay a high price. And it doesn't even have to be a high price, I should say. We'll just say the importer is going to pay a price. And then the exporter is going to have to pay for taxes out of that price, right? And so then what they receive net of taxes is going to be this bottom line. So this represents the tax revenue. Well, we'll have to have how many people are paying taxes, but that's the tariff right there. Let's now assume that the price is not allowed to change. And so this top line is going to line up exactly where the price is right now. Well, it's going to be hard for me to show this exactly right here. Can I do it on the side? Yeah, we'll do it on the side first. What this is saying is, hey, that importer price is going to be the same. And now let's bring this in here. And what do you know? We are now pushing everybody out of this market. All the sellers want to leave the market because the price that they receive down here, it's lower than what they see as an economically feasible deal. They were happy with this price. They're not getting that price anymore. Everybody on the buyer side, they would love to be able to pay that price. But now they have to, they don't have anyone willing to sell to them. That's a big deal because there are people in this market who say actually, I still want this thing. Even if I can't get it at that price, this guy up here, look at how much of a deal he's getting at that price. The benefits he gets from that deal are going to decrease at a higher price, but that's better than getting no deal at all. So what does he do? Well, he starts saying like, hey, I will pay a higher price. And actually, this person says they'll pay a higher price. This person, no, like, I can't pay a higher price. Any higher price than this, I'm going to drop out. So they don't offer a better price. But this person, and this person, they all say, we're willing to pay a higher price if somebody will come in and participate. And so they start bidding up the price. And it goes up here. Oh, look at that. You'll have to remember where those three were. But they start pulling in a few people. Like this person comes in and we'll say this person comes in, right? These three, though, now it has the price has gotten too high. It's no longer a good deal for them to buy. Well, this is good. We now have 2 sellers and we have 5 buyers. These 5 buyers, though, are like, actually, some of us would still like this product. And so they start bidding up the price more. And this guy ends up dropping out. But as this guy drops out because of the higher price, we end up getting this guy and this guy to come into the market. I know these are probably not lining up with where they were before, but that doesn't matter because they're finding people who are willing to supply at these prices. And now every buyer has a seller. And so everybody is happy. At least everyone's willing to participate in this market. No one's going to try and bid up this price anymore. So what has happened? Well, one way we could think of this is the sellers have passed on some of that tax to the buyers. But another way of saying this is the buyers are volunteering to pay a higher price. They're volunteering to pay for part of that tariff to make sure that they still get suppliers. And so even though we can say this is a tariff assessed on the sellers, buyers are going to come in and pay part of it as to make sure that they can get the product they want. And how much of that is paid by the buyers depends on how much the buyers want it and how much the sellers are willing to supply it. So here's another example. Let's say that this is something that's such a good deal. All these people up here, they're just super excited to participate in it. For the sellers, they are barely participating in this market. Like they can't accept a lower price. So we're going to put the price right here. Every buyer has a seller. Everyone's satisfied here. And then this tariff comes in. And this tariff, I'm not going to push them out of the way yet, but that would push all of our sellers out of the way because the price that they receive is going to be way lower than they can afford to accept. So what happens is, actually in this case, I've got my tariff too big. We'll imagine that it can fit in between them right there. Oh, look, we lost some out there. But what's going to happen is the buyers are going to pay the entirety of the tariff because these sellers are so willing to leave the market if the price drops at all, because it's a dog-eat-dog world, cutthroat competition out there. They could be doing other things. The only way to convince the sellers to stay in the market is to convince the buyers to pay the entirety of the tariff. So even though the news or politicians will pitch tariffs as a tax on other countries, it often ends up getting paid by your own country. Number 2, one of the big promises we're hearing about tariffs is that we can use them to replace income taxes. The claim is that we can reduce American taxes and get foreigners to finance our government. From the chessboard, we can see one way that doesn't work. When we increase tariffs, it's not just foreigners paying the tax. But there are 2 other reasons why this won't work. First, there's the lions and landmines problem. Imagine an American politician said, hey, we know you're worried about safety in American cities, so we're going to get rid of the lions and place landmines on the street. Your response would be, we don't have lions in America, but I'm really worried about those landmines. That's the same thing happening with saying we'll remove the income tax and replace it with a tariff. With federal income taxes, there are deductions and credits that reduce your tax burden. As a result, about 1/3 of tax returns owe no federal income tax. When you promise people to get rid of income taxes, 30% of them already don't have any, and many more have a very small tax burden. The federal income tax is a lion, but most people buy a lot of imported stuff, which we know means we will be the ones paying those tariffs. Tariffs are landmines. For many people, you're replacing a non-existent problem with a pretty significant one. Next, let's look at how much the income tax pulls in relative to tariffs. This is a graphic from the US government that shows where tax revenue comes from. The biggest source is the income tax, and one of the smallest is tariffs. Even if we reduce spending, we basically have to get this small arrow to become the big one. The only way we can do that is by raising tariffs. But what happens on the chessboard as we keep doing that? As the tariff increases, you push more people out. Yes, you have a higher tax, but you're not collecting revenue from as many people. Eventually, if you raise the tariff too much, you don't have any people left. As we try to get more revenue from tariffs, we can actually get less, which is exactly why some tariffs are unconstitutional. Number 3, let's talk about the unconstitutional tariffs. And then in the next point, let's talk about why it doesn't even matter. Like any good business idea, the tools of trade can fit nicely into a 2x2 matrix. One of these is going to be imports and exports. The other is going to be tariffs and subsidies. One is, do you get taxed for buying something? The other one is, do you get paid for buying something or producing something, right? That means we can then combine each of these to create all 4 tools of trade policy. Even though we have 4 tools of trade policy, this column right here actually is rarely used. Why? Well, we sometimes see the government pay exporters, like in the 1980s, when it started paying farmers for selling their crops to certain countries. That's an export subsidy, but there was some controversy over the fairness of the program and whether it fit with America's international agreements. So it didn't last long. And if you think that gets people upset, try paying Americans to buy stuff from other countries. It is not a good political move. So we never see import subsidies either. That just leaves this column of tariffs, which you hear about tariffs all the time. We already know that we put import tariffs on. That's what we're hearing a lot of discussion about right now. But what about export tariffs? Some countries have them, but in the United States, we do not. Why not? Well, because if you go to the U.S. Constitution, it says no tax or duty shall be laid on articles exported from any state. Export tariffs are unconstitutional. Why would the founding fathers prohibit export tariffs? Number 4, the chessboard gives us the answer, and it also shows us why this ban in the Constitution doesn't even matter. An export tariff will increase the price of the exported good to the people buying it, in our case, our trading partners. So in this case, these are the Americans, and these are our trading partners. And there's this insight in economics distilled from hundreds of years of serious study, known only by the people who study economics with intense curiosity, that says when the price of something increases, people buy less of it. You can see that over here. These are the people who are no longer buying it. But you can also see over here that incomes have gone down. These people who are Americans exporting things, they are receiving a lower price than they were before. So they have lower incomes than they did before. And another arcane piece of economic wisdom says that if incomes go down, people buy less stuff. So we buy less from our trading partners, which means their incomes go down, further decreasing how much American stuff they buy. So obviously, Americans are right to not like export tariffs because they lead to lower American incomes and lots of other problems. Let's see why import tariffs are a much better policy. Now, the Americans are the buyers up here, and our trading partners are the sellers. Import tariffs increase the price of imported goods. That means Americans will buy less of them, right? Here we go. That's these guys. And the incomes of our trading partners will go down. When their incomes go down, they buy less stuff, including the goods they import from us. And when they buy less from us, American incomes go down. Corporate wants you to identify the differences between these two tariffs. They're the same tariff. Even though export tariffs are banned in the Constitution, import tariffs create the same effects. That's why the biggest opponents of tariffs are exporters. They know that if we buy less from other countries buy less from us. Tariffs are a terrible policy, especially in a world where we figured out that we can create so much more value through cooperation rather than through fighting. But if you want to know something that kills even more economies, then you need to watch this video. And also, look into that microwave thing. It's going to get you.